So you're ready to be Dungeon Master, to delve into Dungeons & Dragons head first. Carve the path for your friends and lead the way into incredible adventures and some of the most memorable and funny experiences you will ever have. I was in your shoes once, and now I want to help you be the best DM you can possibly be for your players. Just so you know, this series will give you advice on how to run a game and inform you of what your responsibilities are to that game. It will not explain the rules one-to-one. For that, you will need to read the books. And the books that you'll need as a Dungeon Master are the Dungeon Master's Guide, the Player's Handbook, and the Monster Manual. But there's also a few I recommend picking up just to make sure your game's the best they can be. So, the Dungeon Master is of course the person who writes and runs the adventures your players will be embarking on. But even before this, it must be understood that the Dungeon Master is the person at the table who has the job of ensuring that everyone at that table is having fun. This is a huge responsibility and needs to be top priority at almost all times, because even though you as the DM spent hours prepping a serious hardcore horror dungeon that was meant to scare your players and intimidate them and make them really think, you have to allow those players to use Timmy the Orphan Boy to check for traps, because that's the workaround that their evil characters have come up with. Which brings me to how you ensure that you and your players are both having fun. And the answer to that is simple. You have to talk to them. Before you even think about writing down an idea for your campaign, you need to sit down with all of your players and discuss what they want to play. If your players want to play Lord of the Rings, don't make them sit through an 8-month campaign of Bloodborne meets 12 Angry Men. The worst thing you can do as a DM is ignore player input. Which is why, even after deciding on Mad Max meets The Last of Us as your campaign setting, you need to check in with your players after every single session to ensure that everyone is having fun. That means asking them, what did you like, what did you dislike, and what I can do as a DM to improve this game for everybody. And you need to take that advice and you need to incorporate it into the rest of your campaign. Speaking of the rest of the campaign, writing a setting the players are interested in is only the beginning of writing a fun campaign for everyone. The next thing you need to keep in mind while writing is the players and their characters. Be sure to understand both the player and what their character wants, and incorporate that into what you do and see in the game. This needs to be done on a weekly basis. For example, if your friend Steve is playing in the campaign, and Steve loves XCOM, and he wants to go into every combat to figure out the most strategic and efficient way possible to win, and that's why he is playing D&D, don't run a campaign where there's only going to be one combat session every 3 sessions. Steve is going to leave very quickly. And remember that if Steve's character, Mr. Benedict, is a monster hunter who uses his clan's ancient blood magic to take down magical beasts, do not only throw humanoid enemies at Mr. Benedict, because he will miss the hunt and so will Steve. Instead, try to incorporate monsters into weekly combat. And you could do this by perhaps the main clan that the party is up against is going to be using monsters to kill their enemies instead of fighting themselves. This will add an interesting and varying enemy type for Steve to strategize for, and also give Mr. Benedict time to shine on a weekly basis using his monster hunting techniques to help save the day for the party. This sense of incorporating player characters into the game also needs to be done in sweeping story arcs as well. Imagine your next player is Jessica, and Jessica was really interested in the setting that everyone had decided upon. So, her backstory is all about her character Angriana, and how she escaped from her clan, but before she did, she stole the leader's most prized possession. If you don't incorporate that into your campaign, Jessica is going to feel as though she wasted her time coming up with such a great story for her character. And Angriana will wonder why she is even on this adventure in the first place. So perhaps you use what she stole as the basis for an adventure, or maybe even the whole campaign, leaving Jessica excited to see where her story leads every week and making Angriana's act of defiance mean something. Ensuring player fun isn't only done in writing, but is also done while running the campaign. And this comes in the form of engagement. If a player seems like they aren't engaged at any point during a session, that is when you throw whatever is currently happening directly in their face. If you are haggling with the party about the price of a magic item and someone has stopped role-playing to look down at their phone, that is when you say, "Grunk, as you discuss with this man the ridiculous price he has set on this bag of holding, you notice that a young boy has taken advantage of your group's distraction and started shoplifting items all throughout the store." This right here will immediately put that player at the forefront of the action during this scenario, where otherwise they would have stared down at their phone for 10 minutes looking at TikTok, wondering why they even played the game in the first place. And this can be done in almost any situation while playing the game. Even in combat, if you see a player shift their attention elsewhere, that is when you shift the combat towards their character to bring them straight back into the fray. As a dungeon master, your job is to ensure fun at the table for everyone, but it is important to remember that you are one of those people at the table playing Dungeons & Dragons. So if you want to watch your players fight, talk, or see anything that you find fitting to put in your game, you can do that. If you think Jessica and Steve and their characters should fight in a post-apocalyptic Budokai Tenkaichi, then you do it, you put it in your game. Because being the dungeon master gives you full control of the story, and the story is yours to tell. But it is also your player's story to experience and manipulate. So as long as that balance is healthy, and everyone's thoughts and opinions are communicated, and everyone is having a fun time playing the game that you've all decided to have a fun time playing, you're doing your job perfectly. In the next episode, I will be discussing players and what a player can do and what their most important job is while playing the game of Dungeons & Dragons. So please be sure that you subscribe so you don't miss that upload, and just go out there and have fun playing games with your friends.